development. Today, we have the pleasure, I have the distinct pleasure of having a conversation with Marianne Anyikam about her professional journey, how to, as you can see, maximize opportunities throughout your career. Today is really going to be think about it like a fireside chat. So Marianne and I are going to, again, kind of just have a conversation. We want this to be interactive. So as we move through this conversation together, please use the chat, put in your questions, put in your thoughts. And this is also being recorded. And so it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Nicole Bush, who is our director for Alumni Career and Professional Development, is all things tech today. So she'll put in the chat, the YouTube link. And if you have any issues with sound or video, please feel free to direct message her. We'd also love for you to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. And then we're going to go ahead and get started. So let me just spotlight us. And Marianne, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Sarah. Thank you.
I know that when you and I had talked originally about this idea, I just was so excited to learn about you and to hear about your experience. And so why don't we start there? Just if you want to introduce yourself, everybody has your title in the job description, but tell us about your work at HP and anything else that would be helpful for us to know.
Sure. So again, thanks, Sarah, for inviting me, and welcome alumni. I'm super excited to be here. As Sarah said, I lead global resiliency, or I guess as the slide says, I lead global resiliency for HP. Most people have no idea what that means, but think about it as a rubber. When you think of resilience, you think of a rubber band when you pull it and it comes right back. So in this role, I manage and I head HP's efforts towards ensuring that no matter what the disruption is, we as a company can bounce back in record time and return to business as usual as quickly as possible. So that includes, under my umbrella, I have crisis management. I also have business continuity. So again, anything that could potentially interrupt our everyday business. How do we proactively anticipate that disruption and prepare for it? That's what my role entails. Having said that, it's been a journey because I've only been in this role for a year. And in my prior roles, I don't meet the profile of a business continuity professional. So the question is, and I get this a lot, how did you end up going from everything you've done, mostly anti-corruption, FCPA investigations, to resilience? What was that about? And I will talk about that as we go along. But on the personal side, I am married to my Tulane sweetheart. We've been married for 20 years and we have 16-year boy-girl twins. And that's my story. I'll leave the rest up for questions as they come up from Sarah.
Okay, great. Yes. Let's just start with kind of asking that question back to you, right? How did you get started in your professional journey? Just kind of walk us through, you're at Tulane and then what?
So I'm at Tulane. I get a degree in accounting and a minor in information systems. It's my junior year, and I know I have to get an internship. So I partner with a program called Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, SEO. Plug for SEO, right? Great opportunity. I got an internship in New York with JP Morgan. Great experience, right? And as part of that program, I was paired with a mentor out of PwC. She was a tax professional. Now, for those of you with accounting backgrounds or who know anything about accounting, when you think of an accounting degree, career-wise, you think, oh, audit or tax. Okay, but that was a challenge for Marianne. I did not want to go into audit or tax. I did not want something traditional. But I didn't know what I wanted. I knew the attributes of what I wanted. I wanted something that was not predictable. I did not want a predictable day. I didn't want a guidebook every day. I didn't want a manual. I wanted a certain degree of uncertainty to my day. I wanted a role that would keep me engaged. So during my internship, I had several discussions with my mentor. And at some point, I think she got rather frustrated because, Marianne, you have this picture in your head, but it doesn't match audit or tax. What do we do with you? Good question. She paired me up with a guy in PwC who was in a role called forensic investigations. I'd never heard of that. Now, this was 2 decades ago, more than 2 decades ago. Had a great conversation with him. And when I had the discussion with him and learned more about what he did, he had an accounting degree. He was involved more on cases where clients would have issues, either fraud investigations, or they would have a dispute, right, with another party, and they engaged attorneys to help with that dispute. But the attorneys would engage the accountants to help with the numbers side. So you're getting a mix of litigation and investigations. And because every case is so different, there's the excitement factor for me. There's the unpredictability. There is that variety that I was craving. And you know, when you have a picture in your head, but you can't fully define it, but you hear it, you know exactly that's what you want. That was how I ended up with, I ended up graduating from Tulane. I made 2 very key decisions. I made one decision to get a job in New York. Of course, everybody told me that was a risk. I did not apply to any companies in New Orleans. That was a risk, calculated risk. I interviewed at all big, I think then it was Big 6, all big accounting firms, got all my offers in New York. I took an offer with PwC and I joined their dispute analysis and investigations group then. So my portfolio then was really a variety of cases. Being in New York, you've got the banks, you've got financial services, you've got the publishing house. So investigations across the gamut. I did that for a few years and then I transferred to PwC in Houston when I got married because my spouse was in Houston. Now, moving to Houston, I stayed with investigations, but that was when, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this, when bribery investigations were really beginning to pick back up. So I got into a very big project on FCP investigations, meaning Foreign Corrupt Practice Act, which is a law in the US that makes it illegal for US companies to bribe or offer to bribe foreign government officials, right, in exchange for business, to either retain or obtain business. Loved it, got into it, lots of travel, lots of great experience in that field. And a few years later, I had twins and I decided that I wanted a bit less travel, but I still wanted to stay in the investigation space, specifically in the FCA space. So I joined a mid-sized accounting firm, did that for a couple of years, and I went in-house with HP. And this was at the point where HP was under an FCP investigation. So it was a great transition, right? To go from representing clients who had FCPA issues to working in-house and building a robust compliance program. How do we make sure that we don't get into an issue like this in the future, right? So it became more of a compliance role than an active investigation role. So I've been with HP for about 12 years now, right? I've done anti-corruption for a while. About 4 years ago, I started looking at upward mobility. How do I grow in this field? Do I go, you will hear the discussion between breadth and depth. Do I go deeper into investigations or do I widen my breadth? And that's a question every professional really should be asking. Which way do you want to go? Each of those has pros and cons, right? One of them might get you further in your career faster, while the other one will get you higher in the long run. So it's a trade-off, right? Do you go deeper or do you go broader? I chose to broaden my career. So I kept my investigation skill, my investigation portfolio, but I added an audit piece to it. Remember, I chose not to go into audit initially, but I added an audit piece to it. And then a year ago, I made a very conscious decision as my kids are getting older, I'm really ready to catapult my career. So I started having discussions. This is where the mentorship comes in, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about mentors, we'll talk about sponsors and what the difference is. So I started having very deep conversations with my mentor and my sponsor. What do I want to do? And the question became, okay, What are your skill sets? What's your portfolio? What's your value proposition? What's your brand? What do you bring to the table? So I had to define all those. And we identified 2 or 3 areas I could go into. But the one thing that kept resonating with everyone was, Marianne, you are a risk management leader who works with leadership, clients, or whoever to ensure that they identify their risks, but more importantly, they mitigate those risks. It doesn't matter if you're doing this as a forensic investigator. It doesn't matter if you're doing this as a channel compliance auditor. You are a risk management leader. And that's how I got into this role. We identified an opening within HP where, as a result of COVID and how prepared or unprepared certain companies were, they decided to make a dedicated role that would focus on building HP's resiliency. And given my background in risk management, it just made perfect sense that I would segue into this role. But I will tell you that left alone without the insight of mentors and sponsors, I would not have been bold enough to step away from what I was used to.
I'm so glad that you brought that up in terms of how you made the decision to make this most recent move. And I'd like to actually go back to that original move that you made from New Orleans to New York, right? And you said, what I heard you say was, it was a high risk decision. If you can just kind of walk us through, I feel like so much of the time people know what high risk means, but like, how did you get there? How did you decide that that's what you were going to do? How did you move through the feelings? Like, take us back to Marianne at that point.
So young Marianne, you can hear an accent. I'm originally from Nigeria. And when I came to the US, my first stop was New York, right? So I made up my mind that even though I was moving to New Orleans, I would come back to New York. So that idea was already set, and we would find a way to do that. Hence, when I interned in junior year, I made the decision to intern in New York because I knew that would increase my chances when applying at the end of graduation. So I said high risk because when you decide to only interview with companies in a certain city where your school isn't based, you run the risk of not getting any offers, right? And that's why I called it high risk. But I was willing to take that risk because of a few things. One, the accounting firms I was interviewing with in New York had offices in New Orleans. So the first thing I had to do was to impress the New Orleans folks, the partners in New Orleans. And that made it easier for them to refer me to the New York practice. That was one. The second thing was I was also very involved in the Accounting Honor Society at Tulane, which helped. Third, I worked with the A.B. Freeman Career Services Office. So that exposure and that networking helped in my interviewing, my job search. But in making the decision for me, I wanted to start my career in a city with a wide variety of industries. And that was what New York brought to the table for me.
Got it. Okay. I want to dig in a little bit to, you've talked a couple of times now about mentoring, networking. How was this something that you were taught? Was this something that you had to kind of fumble through? Like, how have you developed such a strong network? And then I'd love for you to pivot to how you're defining mentor and sponsor.
Okay. It's a mix of both. So remember when I said I interned in my junior year, and the program I interned through assigned a mentor to me. So that was my first experience with a mentor. It's not something that I was taught in school. It was actually through this program. And because of the early exposure to mentorship that I got, I am a huge proponent of advising young career professionals to get mentors early. And when you get a mentor, there are a few things that I would say. Don't just get one mentor. I challenge people to get a mentor who is about 2 years away from where you are, because they're close enough to still remember and advise. That's one, right? They will help you where you are. But also get a mentor a few years away, because that mentor will help you build your path, your longer term career path. So that they are more removed from where you currently are, but they will help you with that visionary step. So again, for me, I was lucky enough to get engaged in my junior year. And I think that's a good place to start. In fact, I'm already advising my teenagers, my kids, to get mentors. It's not too early. And they're 16, so it's not too early to do that. I have found that, especially now in my career, mentorship is great, but sponsorship is great. What is the difference? The way I look at it, and you've heard this definition before, a mentor is somebody who talks with you. I just walked past my mentor in the hallway, one of my mentors a few minutes ago. The person, he or she talks with you, your mentor talks with you. Your sponsor talks about you. So think about your name popping up in a room, right? Maybe a talent discussion or just lunch. And leaders are discussing a potential opening. If your sponsor is at that table, your sponsor is the one who says, hey, what are you looking for? Oh, you want somebody who is great at risk management, incredible communication skills, stays calm under pressure, very innovative, very agile. Hey, I have a candidate for you. Her name is Marianne. You really consider her. That's the person who talks about you. So if you have one without the other, you're really shortchanging yourself.
How do you make sure that the sponsor is talking about you in the way that you want them to, is highlighting the skills and the experiences that you want?
You have to make sure that your sponsor knows what you're about. Your sponsor knows what you're looking for. I will tell you my experience with a sponsor. So in my case, my first sponsor was assigned to me, right? And I was so lucky. This is interesting. He's actually a Tulane alum. I just remembered this. He's an MBA alum from Tulane. So he was assigned to me. And of course, right out the bat, I think the Tulane connection helped a lot. But one of the first things he challenged me to do was, you're very focused on, I'm a compliance professional. I'm a compliance professional. But Marianne, I've had 2 meetings with you, and I tell you, there are a lot more strengths you bring to the table than you've highlighted. And he begins to list the strengths. Sarah, I was in awe, right? So we ended the meeting with, I want you to take a step back, Marianne, and pull yourself out of the mindset you have right now that is almost pigeonholing you into, hey, I'm a compliance professional. Think about the strengths I just shared with you. And your assignment is to look at the breadth and depth of your career to date and come up with more of those skills. And then in our next meeting, we are going to identify potential career paths for you. So to answer your question, it is really your responsibility, the protege in this case, to educate your sponsor. But on the flip side, the sponsor can guide you, particularly if you've got a bit of a narrow mindset about what your career should look like.
That makes so much sense. I appreciate you defining those. I'm thinking about the individuals that may not have, right? So you had clarity of what you were and in terms of professional, and your sponsor was like, maybe think about it differently. What advice would you give to someone who is just, it's a blank slate? Where do they go? How do they figure out how to talk about themselves to a sponsor or a mentor?
The very first thing I would say is take a step back and ask yourself, those moments you felt fulfilled, what were you doing? What did you enjoy about them? Write those down. You will be amazed at the picture you will draw when you do that. It's a very simple, and I hope I'm not oversimplifying it, exercise, but it starts with a question. When have I felt most fulfilled? What was the situation? What was my role? What was my contribution? And I find that when I ask myself those questions, I begin to understand what intrigues me, what appeals to me. if you can start with that, it makes it a lot easier to decide, okay, I know what appeals to me. Now I need to start doing the research to see what career path or what roles would feed and grow this passion that I have. Sounding boards are great. Find a sounding board. Define your own, people use this term, your own board of directors. It doesn't matter if you're early career, and whatever I say, it applies to early career, mid-career, frankly, right? Find your own board that will challenge you. Find your own board that will make you think and act outside of your comfort zone, right?
I'd love to lean into that a little bit more. So kind of a two-part question. One of them is in the chat. So how did you find your mentors outside of the one that you were assigned? Were they within HP? So again, kind of digging a little bit into the mentor side again. And then you mentioned board of directors. Right? Some people know what that means. Some people don't. I'd love for you to just expand on that. How have you found your board of directors, and how has that just helped you professionally?
Okay, so let me talk about the mentor. I've talked about my mentor from internship. One of my current mentors, funny story, is someone that I've met, talked to, chatted with, right, at HP. And I've always heard how phenomenal she's been with people and helping them propel their careers. It never occurred to me to ask her to be a mentor. So, funny story, I'm having lunch with her admin, just a regular lunch. And I'm talking about, I think I really need to find a mentor within HP, yada, yada. And after my little spiel, her admin said, XYZ is an amazing, amazing mentor. And she's helped so many people find their path. And she's so passionate about it. And I laughed because, I've had conversations. So anyway, she said, I think I'm going to put you on her calendar. She didn't ask me. She said, I'm going to put you on her calendar for a lunch. So I had lunch with the person. And of course, I'm going through here's my experience, and, here's what I want to do. I would love to have a mentor to work with me on this. And before I could go any further, she said, I would be honored to be your mentor. So for me, it was easy because I had somebody, and she said, I've followed your career through, and I've always thought of you as this and that. And, you present yourself, you project yourself. I would love to work with you on this journey. And that was how she became my mentor. I talk about board of directors, and she's also, I think for her, she plays a funny intersection between mentor and sponsor, because in some meetings, she's my mentor, and in other meetings, she's clearly being a sponsor because I hear her advocating for me. She's the one who would send an email to senior leaders to say, hey, I've got this person, here's what she's looking for. So she does both. When I talk about board of directors, think of it as a small group, right? For me, the smaller the better. Obviously not one or two people, but think of it of a small group of people who understand you. They know where you are going or where you want to go. But the very important thing about board of directors is that they hold you accountable. They hold you accountable. So for me, a very key part of my board of directors, a key member, is my younger sister, right? So I mix between personal and then professional relationships to make my board. She's also an accountant, so she understands the business side of it, but she also knows me personally. She understands the things I'm scared to vocalize, and she will call me out on them. The other members of my board of directors include, of course, my mentor, my sponsor, right? And a few previous leaders I've had who I still keep very close touch with. Why do I have them in here? I have them because they've worked with me. They understand my strengths and the things I struggle with. And so when I have discussions with them about new roles, they're able to guide me, not only using their past experience with me, but also adding on where I would like to go. So for me, it's not more than 5 people really that make up my board.
Something that I'm recognizing in your story is, and I wonder if it's conscious for you, is it feels like you've done a really nice job of putting it out there, right? Of saying to people, I'm looking for a mentor or I'm looking for advice. Is that accurate? Or does it feel like it's a balance of things? I don't know.
I think it's a mix. So if you think about it, I mentioned it to one person at lunch, right? And she ran with it. So I don't think I've gotten to the point of saying, hey, I need a mentor, hey, I need it. But for whatever reason, the few people I've mentioned it to have taken action. So I think it's also important to be very cognizant of who you're reaching out to. Are these the people that can drive action on your behalf?
Mm-hmm. I love that. That makes a lot of sense. I want to pivot a little bit to thinking about or having you share about the majority of your professional career. And so the question is, what has excited you the most about your work and why?
Few things. One of them is the excitement. Every day I come into work or work from home, I don't know what the day is going to bring. Right? So in my current role, there's so many geopolitical triggers out there right now. We don't know which of them is going to blow up to become the next big thing. There is a certain element of unpredictability, which I really like, because it keeps me on my toes constantly. That's one. The second thing I really enjoy is the culture, right, of my current company. And frankly, every company I've been with, right? There is a very intentional purpose to grow people. So one of the things I enjoy is watching my team come out of their shell, grow to really meet their potential. It could be getting them more comfortable speaking to senior leaders, which is something. I'll give you an example. If I have a quarterly business review or quarterly business workshop, whatever you want to call it, I always make a decision to have my staff present. Why is that? One, it gives them the exposure to senior leadership, right? Two, it gets them out of the weeds from just doing the work to really telling the story. How does my work fit into the big picture? It's one thing for you to spend every day working on this, but when you now have to package that and present it to an executive, you're forced to ask yourself that question, and so what? Because all they want to hear is, you've done all this, and so what? So again, I love the unpredictability of my role. I enjoy watching my people grow. And I would say the third one, which I mentioned again, is the culture. There's just a very intentional culture here to ensure that people feel engaged and welcome, which is very important to me.
Mm-hmm. So let's go on the flip side, right? Mm-hmm. So what surprises you? What feels challenging about the work that you've done?
The same thing that excites me, not knowing what's coming. So if you ask me what keeps me up at night, that's it. Oh goodness, have we planned for this? Have we planned for that event that is going to take us unawares? So the same thing.
You mentioned about the culture and about being a manager, and I'm curious for you. Again, we've talked about mentoring and sponsorship. What do you feel like makes a good manager? Like, how do you show up as a manager each day?
For me, I've also had the benefit of working with some amazing leaders. I don't like the term manager, right? So what makes a good leader for me is one who takes time to understand their team. What does that even mean? It means from the very beginning, you are clear on what the goals are, and you clearly communicate those goals to your team, and you are aligned, right? So when I define goals for the fiscal year, I have a vision, but I have to get the buy-in of my team, and they are allowed to tweak that vision, because at the end of the day, we sink or swim together. So I enjoy and appreciate leaders who make a very conscious effort to engage their team in defining and aligning on the vision. That's one. I like a leader who doesn't swing surprises on their team. And don't surprise me as a leader, right? If I'm your leader and something is going south, please let me know. I'm in a better position to defend you, advocate for you, if I know ahead of time, as opposed to finding out in a big meeting. So surprises, not very welcome. The other thing I look for in a leader is a compassionate leader. So think about what we've gone through the past 3 years and ask yourself, did I feel safe with my leader, right? Those of us that have kids at home have had to juggle being teachers with working and everything in between. And we've had to be on Zoom calls on video. So one of the first things I told my staff, I said, look, guys, when you come on video and your son or daughter jumps on the call, it's fine. If your cat or dog jumps in, we laugh about it. But these are the things that people worry about, right? So is it okay that my child is interrupting my call? Absolutely. I tell them, take 30 seconds, attend to the need, and come back, because it's less disruptive than you trying to shoot a child away for 5 minutes. So I'm looking for a leader who is compassionate. And what I look for, I try to give to my team. So those are some of the things if you notice, when I described the leader, I didn't mention anything about intellect and analytical skills. I can teach you those things. I can't teach you compassion. I can't teach you emotional intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that I really focus on.
So thinking about, this is another question. So as a manager, as someone who's hiring, what do you look for in a new staff member? And then generally as HP as a company, like who would be a good fit?
What I look for when I interview candidates, I'm looking for candidates who are, number one, you understand the role. You will not believe how many interviews I've had and asked the candidate, so tell me what you know about this role, and they come in with a blank slate. So I'm looking for somebody who has at least done some homework on the company and on the role. And then you need to be able to clearly articulate to me why you think you are a good fit for this over every other candidate. I need to understand how your previous experience, how you believe your prior experience has prepared you for this role. What do you plan to bring into this role? Those are some of the first things I ask. And one of the first questions I really use to assess a candidate is when I say, tell me about yourself. And they just regurgitate their resume or their CV. My follow-up question is, I have not learned anything new about you over and above what I have in front of me on paper. Who are you? Tell me who you are. Sell yourself to me. Where is the human side of you? There is a human behind this resume. What makes that human tick? What are some of your key skills, your key attributes? What is your value proposition? What makes you who you are? Again, I can teach you the technical. So depending on the role, there are certain baseline technical skills I'm looking for. So I won't go into those, right? Because again, you can be taught. But I'm looking for somebody who can think on the spot. So I will throw some questions at you. There's no right or wrong answer. I just want to see how quickly you can think on your feet. Because remember, my role is unpredictable. There's no manual. So if during the interview, I throw a question at you and you freeze, that tells me that you can't handle unpredictability in this role.
Mm-hmm. What about for HP? What makes someone a good fit for the company?
think it's a lot of the same things. I think it's, we're looking for people who are a strong candidate for HP would have the things I've just talked about, but depending on the role, it might also be things like strong project management skills. Communication is key because HP is a global company. You really have to be comfortable communicating across various cultures, various countries. Again, because we're a global company, right? Time zones, somebody who is flexible, somebody who is adaptable, open to change, right? So we're looking for somebody who understands that every day is different and that you are adaptable and flexible enough to make those changes. Culture is also a huge thing for HP. So we're looking for candidates who will grow into the culture and grow with the culture. That includes everything I've talked about: compassion, treating people with respect. And then we talk about the HP way. What is the HP way? It includes things like winning with integrity. So it's, so again, look at the things I'm listing. I'm not going through a bunch of Excel attributes and tech. We're looking for people who will really fit into the way the culture here is, which is a very positive culture.
I love that. I do want to pivot a little bit to kind of how you manage both personal and professional life, right? So work-life balance is the trending term. What does that look like for you?
Sarah, I don't believe in that balance because the word balance, okay, and I have the feeling that I was going to say that. The word balance for me, when I hear balance, I see a scale and it's 50-50. Everybody's story is different. For me, it's not 50-50. Some days, my personal life is going to get 60% because somebody has a gymnastics meet and somebody has a swim meet. And so which means that my professional life might get 40% during the day. But you know what that means? Once we're done with the activities, I'm going to boot up my computer and work extra hours at night. And that's why working with a company with a flexible culture helps, because it enables me to be the mom, the wife, and the professional that I want to be. I don't know that it's 50-50. There's that give and take. But am I able to bring my whole self into each of those roles? Yes. But there's a pendulum. And it's not 50-50 at every point in time.
We should rebrand it to the pendulum and not the balance. I like that. Talk to me a little bit about burnout, right? I think like with work life, with the pendulum, I won't say balance, but comes the idea of burnout. What's that look like for you? How have you moved through it?
Burnout is real. You have to understand what your own threshold for burnout is. My threshold might not be your threshold, and vice versa. I will tell you what I do. Two things. I'll share what I do to manage my burnout, and secondly, what I do to encourage my team not to burn out. So on my side, I make a personal decision to, as much as possible, literally close my computer at a certain time, late afternoon, because I have to attend the boot camp. It's a running joke in my house now that Camp Gladiator makes mom a better mom, because once she goes an hour to her camp and comes back, I'm a different person. So that was a very conscious decision I made during the pandemic, right before the pandemic actually. And then we went virtual with that, and I'm back in person. So that hour a day is very important to me. And again, many evenings I come back and I reboot my computer. So that was me being aware, recognizing that I just couldn't do this nonstop. It wasn't going to work. For my team, what I do to help manage their burnout is really listening. I'm big on video calls, and I know some people are uncomfortable with that, but I can't tell how you're feeling if I don't see your face, because my team is a global team, so they're not here with me. So I get on video with them. I make sure that I have at least weekly touch points with them, because I need to see how you're doing. And my very first question in every meeting is, how are you? And I'm not looking for a trite fine, because I can see it on your face. And I can tell when you're burning out. Your deliverables will suffer. And so my goal, my challenge to myself is try to help you before you get to that point. It's encouraging them to take the time they need to go to those PTA meetings or to go to your child's practice. As long as you meet the deadline we've set, I trust you to be a mature professional in how you manage your time.
I love that. I think that also, right, that goes back to that emotional intelligence piece. Yeah.
Yep.
We have a question about also with mentoring, but on the flip side of, have you ever been approached to be someone's mentor? And if so, what did you like about their approach?
Yes, the answer is yes. So I'm currently mentoring as part of a program with HP, but I also have mentors who've approached me outside of programs. What I like about the approach I like is when people are direct and they say, hey, you and I talk casually. You give me all these tips already. Could you please be my mentor? And my question is why? Why do you want to formalize this? I'm looking for a specific answer because it tells me if you've done your homework. And the answer is, I want you to help hold me accountable. Because these casual conversations and the tips you give me, I may or may not follow up because we're so casual about it. But if we're in a formal mentoring relationship where we have set meetings, set monthly touch point, at the end of each meeting, we align on what my assignments are. And then the next meeting, we begin with an update on those. That will force me to be more accountable. I like that approach. I like mentors who own the process. It means that you come into a mentoring discussion, a monthly checkpoint, for instance. I don't care if it's Microsoft Word, if it's notes, or if it's PowerPoint, please have something to share. I've had experiences where mentors will come in and for 30 minutes, you want me to drive the discussion. You don't have an agenda. And I tell them, guys, this is not a good use of my time or your time. So I like mentors who are organized. Again, I don't care how you organize it. You have a clear thought process and intention for this program or for this relationship, because that's what it is. And then we hold each other accountable. Challenge me as I challenge you.
I love that. So we are almost right at the end of our time together. I am curious for you, are there any other things that you feel are really helpful to share with participants and viewers? And I know that, again, kind of going back to our original conversation, we talked about like how much, if I remember this right, like how much you enjoy talking about just like the choices that you've made professionally and how that has just continued to help you be successful. So with that in mind, any other pieces of advice or just experiences that you want to share?
Learn from me and have an open mind. I did not have an open mind in terms of where I wanted to take my career. Be very clear on what makes you happy in your role. Don't hesitate to say no to an opportunity if it doesn't align with the homework you've done. But having said that, it's a fine line between saying it doesn't align and, okay, I'm too scared to make the leap. So be sure that your decision is not driven by fear. But keep an open mind, and keeping an open mind goes hand in hand with having a diverse membership in your board of directors because they all see different things in you.
I love that. If people have questions and if people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
LinkedIn, email, those are your two best options.
Okay, perfect. Yep.
And you can share those, Sarah.
Okay, I'll put that in the follow-up. Thank you for letting me know. Well, we are at the end of our time. We are at the end of our questions. I just want to say thank you for sharing your time and energy today. Do you want to close us out with anything else?
No, thank you for the opportunity, Sarah. And hopefully the viewers found this useful. So thanks for all the questions.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a good day.
Take care, everyone.